Well, it's Monday, and the transfer portal is finally closed. We're going to talk about what that means for Alabama, guys that have left, how that impacts the roster. A late night guy slipped out on us, and we'll talk about him as well. All that right here on Cover Crimson. Like, subscribe, thumbs up, brought to you by mybookie.ag. Let's go. He's Clint Lamb. I'm Mick Gillispie. Thanks for hanging out with us, guys. Clint, let me get into this right away. Finally, the transfer portal is shut. I've been reading all of your updates on covercrimson.com, and guys, you can join there as well. $25 off to start the new year. But it's a big list of guys that ended up transferring out of Alabama, 22. And it seems like we got hit pretty hard at wide receiver, linebacker, too. A lot of the young linebackers leaving, and that includes the guy that slipped out last night.
Yeah, it's the transfer portal is closed for Alabama 5 days after their bowl game. The portal remains open until then, so that closed last night at midnight. It's interesting because a lot of these guys, like, there wasn't anything that was overly shocking until the last one, maybe the last couple. I mean, if you talk about Elijah Pritchett, your starting right tackle, in some ways this feels like, a couple of years ago with Javion Cohen, where he's like a starter. I think Cohen was actually quite a bit better than Elijah Pritchett, or more consistent than Pritchett, but it's one of those situations where he leaves, but he had been in a platoon. Really, Tyler Booker had been working both with Cohen and Emil Ekiyor Jr. as far as like a 3-man rotation at guard. So you were getting Tyler Booker kind of ready to step up in his spot at left guard. You've seen Elijah Pritchett kind of working there at right tackle, been the starter, but Wilkin Formby, got a couple of starts at the beginning of the year. Tyler Booker got one start, that season when he was a true freshman. So Wilkin Formby's a redshirt freshman. Tyler Booker's a true freshman, but kind of similar situations. Tyler Booker obviously has shown a lot more up to this point than Wilkin Formby, but Formby was working in the platoon with Pritchett. Now he's kind of expected to slide into that starting role. There was obviously been a couple of guys, added, whether it be through the high school rankings with Jackson Lloyd or with, through the transfer portal with Arkel Agunum. I think is how you say it. I'm going to botch his name the first couple of times I say it, but they've kind of replenished some of what they've lost at some of these positions. But like right tackle, that might have been surprising to some Alabama fans. But then the last one, Justin Okoronkwo, I think that was the most surprising for me personally. Just because was he expected to start in 2025? Probably not. But because you are getting back, Deontay Lawson said he's coming back. Now, we don't know what to expect from him, but you are getting back Justin Jefferson due to that JUCO rule change. And you bring in Nakai Hill-Green, the Colorado transfer. So, like, it's kind of the situation like it was this year. Like, this entire season, we were talking about how talented the off-ball linebacker room was, but they're planning on Alabama's got a plan on, okay, what's 2025 going to look like? Because you're probably going to lose Jahad Campbell. You're probably going to lose Deontay Lawson. And then you got Justin Jefferson, who was listed as a senior at the time. So it's like you're going to be losing your top 3 guys at that spot. Well, now they've kind of kicked the can down the road. You get Jefferson back. You get Deontay Lawson back through injury. So we don't know what his 2025 is going to look like. But you also add the number 1 linebacker in the transfer portal, but he's going to be, in his final year of eligibility. So Lawson's probably gone after next year. Jefferson probably going to be gone after next year. And then, Hill-Green will be as well. So it's like Okoronkwo, who is like a 3-star player from Germany, really toolsy guy, reportedly ran like a 4.5, 6'3", 230, but needed some development because he wasn't overly he was still adjusting to playing American football. But, he decided he was a lot more ready this year than I was expecting him to be. And so watching him kind of grow and develop as a special teamer, and then also he would get some spot snaps here and there. Obviously played in the bowl game when Jahad Campbell went down for at least a snap. There have been some losses, those are probably the two most surprising outside of maybe a Devontae Smith. When he entered, I think that was surprising. Wide receiver has been hit pretty hard. Off-ball linebacker's been hit pretty hard. But I think overall, Alabama's done a pretty good job of replenishing some of that depth. And I still think they got two really good rooms as far as those two position groups.
I just wonder, like, when I look at the way that this is going right now, it's the teams that can't go and recruit, right? Because they're just not like Vanderbilt or Mississippi State or Kansas, places that like, they don't really have much of a program. They'll pop a season out every now and then, but they're no blue chippers are going there. They're sliding in to the schools that are getting those players and trying to snag the guys that are kind of the backups, the younger guys, like, hey, I might not get them their freshman year, but I'll give them their sophomore year, right? And then entice them with playing time. Hey, you've been there. You're going to sit on the bench. You might as well come here. And it feels like to me the schools are really paying a price because they're investing in these guys. And then those guys are taking advantage of that investment and then using it to go somewhere else and pay it off. And I think that that's one of the areas where college football, whenever they make a set of rules up, needs to really protect themselves, because it's not fair. I mean, you go and you give this guy a free place to live and he's not, it's not like he's making you any money. I mean, if you want to really get into it, right? Because he's not contributing a whole lot. You're paying for the future with players like that. And then they're going elsewhere and paying it off. And for Alabama, I look at it, Clint, and I worry that losing all of this depth is going to come back and bite them. And that's where Georgia's the same way, all the big schools.
Well, Justin Okoronkwo is a good example of what you're talking about, because he was like a lower rated guy, 3-star. Like I said, he was from Germany, didn't have a lot of experience with American football, but just, it's tough to find guys who are 6'3", 230 and who run a 4.5. And the tools were absolutely there. He wasn't just a big, fast guy. Like, he had, a lot of good instincts and tools, but you're like, this is going to be a developmental prospect. This is a guy who can help early on special teams, which he did, but you don't really expect them to, come in and contribute on defense right away. And I was actually surprised. This was dating back to the spring game. When I watched Okoronkwo in his first ever spring game at a place like Alabama with Division I talent and everything, I was blown away at how far he was as far as his development and maybe how soon he could actually help contribute on defense. And there were some opportunities this year at times, really late in games when you're up by a lot, or like in the bowl game where he ended up seeing a snap, through injury and all that stuff. But, he was a guy that I personally watching him, I'm like, this guy's got a really bright future. But if I'm seeing it, I know other programs are seeing it too, but they're also seeing Alabama. They were supposed to lose 2 of their top 3 off-ball linebackers. They return those 2 guys, and they go sign the number 1 transfer portal linebacker. And then it's like, okay, now the top of the depth chart is pretty solid. And so if you're a guy like Okoronkwo, I think through his early success, the way that he kind of adjusted to the Division I level, in some ways, I think that hurt Alabama, because he went from being a guy who probably viewed himself as a couple of year project to being a guy who, hey, I can contribute right now. I should be. And he probably saw an opportunity with Alabama losing their top 3 guys, or expected to. Hey, I'll be able to push for playing time in this defense next year. And, obviously with the way things worked out, that ended up not being the case. That's totally fine for 2025. I do really like some of the young players that they have. I know the coaching staff likes Caden Jones. He far exceeded my expectations as well. You look at guys like Luke Metz and Abdul Sanders and Darnell Duke Johnson. None of those guys are super highly rated recruits necessarily, but they all have, I think they're very underrated as far as their recruiting ranking. So it's not like they don't have, options. And if it gets to be next year and you don't like how some of those guys are developing, or maybe only one of them is really ready to be a guy, maybe you go hit the transfer portal again and you can add an immediate contributor. That's the good part about the portal. But, a guy like Justin Okoronkwo, I think through his success, he probably, not only did he start to think I can be a player for somebody in 2025, but other programs were watching this cat and just, they all got sources and they're talking to people and they hear how he's developing and they're like, man, we can really sell not only probably a bigger NIL package, but also sell, immediate playing time in 2025. And it's kind of like Jalen Mbakwe. Like these are the types of players. I understand Mbakwe's like the 5-star, and he was a little bit less surprising. But Okoronkwo, I mean, everybody knows from a tool standpoint, he's kind of up there. And so I wasn't surprised that he got pursued. That's why it's a big loss, in my opinion. If I had to like rank the top 10 transfer portal losses, which we're going to be doing, Okoronkwo, I'm going to go ahead and let people know he would be up there for me.
All right, bad news for Alabama. What about King Mack? I liked his name, and he just transferred. Now he's transferring somewhere else. What happened there? Cornerback.
Yeah,
Safety.
I think it's another situation like Bray Hubbard, the fact that he continued to develop and became who he became. So now you're looking at the safety room, and it's like, okay, Bray Hubbard's going to be a starter next year. Keon Sabb's going to be coming back. A lot of people thought he might be a one and done. Obviously, the injury changed that, but he's going to be a starter. You look at some of the other pieces that they have in that room. The fact that he played Husky, and I think he's kind of got a Husky mindset. But just watching him, the lack of length, being 5'10" at that position, it's like Tennessee. They just put a big-bodied receiver in Chris Brazzell in there in the slot, and it was a mismatch problem immediately. And it ended up being a key factor in how Tennessee was able to beat Alabama. And so you look at him, you're like, man, in the past, like nickel corners have kind of been, undersized guys as far as, 5'9", 5'10", 5'11". Nowadays, with kind of the big slot options that you have, you can flex tight ends out there. You got to be able to get a safety on him. You got to be able to, but it's just anytime you get him matched up in a man-to-man situation, he's going to have or give up a lot of size. So that I think ended up impacting things. He could be a Buda Baker type of player who's moving around, flying around, getting downhill, but just the man-to-man stuff was always going to affect him. And with the way Alabama kind of needs that Husky position to play, I just don't think he would have been a big part of the plans there. And at safety, they got their 2 starters locked in. Ivan Taylor coming in. I think he's a guy who can contribute early. And they've got some other really good players there as well, including Zay Mincy, who started the bowl game and showed a lot of promise. I think he's going to be an excellent safety 3 in 2025. And so you start looking at both those rooms and saying, I don't really know or really see myself fitting into the plan significantly in 2025 either. And so, like a lot of these guys, he's looking for more playing time.
Why was the wide receiver room hit so hard? Why would 6 guys leave at wide receiver?
I think it's a combination. I think the writing was on the wall for both Kendrick Law and Kobe Prentice. Mm-hmm. When you start hearing about Cole Adams working in front of them leading up to the season, and the way that it kind of worked out pretty quickly, the value with Kendrick Law's blocking ability out there on the perimeter with Jalen Milroe's legs, that, quickly kind of, Cole Adams' role diminished a little bit. But I think that the coaching staff actually liked his receiving ability and consistency there in the slot more than Kobe Prentice or Kendrick Law. You look at a big body guy like Caleb Odom. This guy was projected to be a tight end and wanted to play receiver, was given the opportunity to play receiver, was inconsistent as a freshman, but the upside is certainly there. But I don't think it's a coincidence that Caleb Odom kind of goes elsewhere, and what they were looking to get out of that position from him specifically with a big body guy, they already had a plan in place. Isaiah Horton enters the transfer portal and immediately gets connected to Alabama. And now they've got their big body guy who's got experience, who's shown a ton of growth and promise. Really like that signing for Alabama. Then you look at like Emmanuel Henderson. Where does he fit in? Ron Williams, Jeremy Bernard, Isaiah Horton. You've got Cole Adams. You've got number of different receivers that are going to be involved in that rotation and in that conversation. You got Jalen Hill coming back. You got Latsier Brooks. You got Jalen Mbakwe now playing receiver. Like, where does Emmanuel Henderson, where would he have fit in? Would he have been, best case scenario wide receiver 4 going into his final year? It's just, I'm not surprised the guys who ended up leaving. I think it's more about the guys who they targeted. Like, they went out and got another big body guy in Derek Meadows. He's more of the raw player, develop a little bit behind Isaiah Horton. Hopefully at some point he can start to contribute. You look at Lightseer Brooks, severely underrated receiver. So and Bubba Hampton's another one that makes a lot of sense. Rico Scott has shown a lot of promise. I've kind of compared him to John Mechie, can play inside, can play outside. So they have plenty of options at the wide receiver position. I wasn't surprised at the number of guys who left because it's not about who left, it's about who's there. And you look, and I still say they're 6, 7 deep. And I think we kind of overestimated the talent this year. But I think as far as, you're expecting growth from certain players and you're expecting a little bit of a different offense, different plan as far as the passing game, I still think they got a lot of options at wide receiver.
All right. Well, interesting, guys. I want to tell you that we're brought to you by mybookie.ag. Use the promo code NEXTROUND to double your initial deposit at the sportsbook. So that gives you the opportunity to watch some hoops, maybe the college football playoff. NFL playoffs are here, including the big game, all that coming up. And you can play it all, have a little bit of fun at mybookie.ag. Use that promo code NEXTROUND. Clint, let me ask you this now, kind of turning the coin. We've lost 22 guys, and I'm excited to see what your top 10 list of guys that left is, and I hope that it's not too many impactful guys. But what about players coming in? We've got a list of guys that have come in, and then over the weekend, a couple of running backs that made their way to Tuscaloosa. What can you tell us about that? And, how many running back positions do they even have right now?
Well, I mean, they still got several. The fact that you're going to be returning Richard Young, you got Jam Miller coming back, you got Kevin Riley, you got Daniel Hill, AK Deer is a player that I know the coaching staff is really excited about. I was actually kind of surprised that the coaching staff was entertaining or courting a couple of running backs, and they're good players. I think they would fit the system. In fact, I wonder if system fit is kind of a reason why they're courting, another player. And I don't know how much interest they would actually have in coming to Alabama. I don't know what opportunities they would have, even though, I guess we'll have to wait and see what ends up happening with that. But it just, they're really, when you start looking at the transfer portal additions, obviously not nearly as many as number of guys who have exited, but at the same time, like you look at, you needed another corner, even though you I wouldn't say surprisingly, but you get Damani Jackson back. I think that's absolutely massive. Now you return your 2 starting corners. You've got some other guys, Deshaun Jones, where does he fit in? Does he play Husky next year? Is he another perimeter corner? You bring in Dijon Lee, you got Chuck McDonald, 2 of the best cornerbacks in the country, both top 100 recruits coming out of high school. How quickly will they acclimate? Can you rely on them to be your, cornerback 3 or cornerback 4? You bring in a guy like Cam Calhoun, who's got a lot of promise and has got multiple years of eligibility left, and now he can kind of fill that void. He could be a starting option for you, a very strong number 3 with his, sight set on 2026, or, he can contribute in 2025. So you fill that spot. You talk about the offensive line. And one thing I'll say, especially with you losing Elijah Pritchett, and replacing him with a very raw player in Arkell Agunum, I wonder how the interior guys, like you got an influx of just tons of interior players right now and not many tackles. So do you see like a Casey Poe play tackle? We brought up that possibility last year, didn't end up coming to fruition. Could we see that this year? Maybe an Olas Alinen. There are some options to guys who could potentially play tackle, but that is, something that I'll be curious to see what ends up happening. If you had Elijah Pritchett coming back and you had him and Wilkin Formby both battling it out there at right tackle, you had Jackson Lloyd who could maybe get involved in that competition or be a key backup on the left side where Elijah Pritchett could strictly focus on the right side. And then you got like a raw prospect like a Gunham. They're kind of seeing where he's at. Maybe he ends up developing and you can get a lot out of him, and he becomes this guy from a height, weight standpoint, movement, has all the tools and things that you're looking for. He's very raw. It doesn't have a lot of experience. Only played a year of high school football in Tennessee. I think he's originally from Nigeria. So it's like, I just don't know what to expect from him. I know the coaching staff thinks he can come in and compete for a job or a spot. in my opinion, in hindsight, he was brought in as an Elijah Pritchett replacement. They were kind of anticipating him entering the portal. When that happened, they ended up already having a plan in place, kind of, headed that off a little bit. So, at the same time, him with like Cam Dewberry coming in, an interior offensive lineman from Texas A&M, the offensive line from a number standpoint in a pretty good place, especially compared to this year. But it's just your tackle to interior guys way off. I mean, I want to say like 12, if I'm not mistaken, 12 or 13 interior guys and 4 tackles. And so that's a little lopsided to me. I'll be curious to see what they do with that. But then you look at like, Nakai Hill-Green, the fact that you're losing Jahad Campbell. You don't know what's going to be going on with Deontay Lawson. He is coming back, but I think it's an ACL injury. And if it is, guys get, come back from that sooner or quicker, but sometimes they're not the same player for a little while. It takes them some time. So it's like, okay, a lot of your youth or younger off-ball linebackers that already entered the transfer portal. So you're getting Justin Jefferson back, but really what does that look like? So you go out and you get a guy to fill that need, kind of can be the field general of your defense, with Deontay Lawson limited or out for a while. So I think they've done a good job of kind of heading off a lot of their problems. I think they were looking for a very specific style of player at receiver. They courted a lot of different guys, but the only one they really pushed for up to this point has been a bigger body guy like Isaiah Horton. I think that's telling. So, I like the portal additions that they've made. I think they've had a really good plan in place. It's just, I think the big thing right now is getting as many guys with the right mindset as you possibly can. Try to get as many team guys as you possibly can. And I think they did a pretty good job of that.
All right. Well, look, man, I think you updated everything. A couple more, one more topic I want to get into today before we wrap it up on this Monday. Keelan Russell has arrived, and he's arrived with hype. Not only is he the best prep in the country, but he talks the way I like. He's talking championship and he's talking starting. And I don't know how you achieve those without believing that you can do that. He had an amazing high school career. I don't know how that's going to translate, but your thoughts on him arriving to start college life in Tuscaloosa?
The more I hear from this guy, obviously the more you see from him, the more impressed you are. But then you start hearing from him, just a special kid, a special talent. These guys don't always pan out, so I really try to refrain from the surefire, label. But he feels. You have to feel confident about his ability to eventually become a star player on the college level. And I don't know what's going to happen with the quarterback battle. I've said that I think Ty Simpson has earned the right to be the presumed starter. I think the coaching staff likes him. I think he's got more talent and ability than people realize. They need to see an offense built around him. We'll know more in the spring, but it's like, I feel good about if he is not the guy, if the critics out there are correct and he doesn't develop the way that he's supposed to, or he hadn't developed the way he's supposed to, and it just doesn't look great. I love the tools from Austin Mack. I love the mindset and the work ethic from Austin Mack. I know the coaching staff absolutely loves him. There's a reason they brought him over from Washington, and they're willing to lose a really good talent, Julian Sayin, to make that happen. But Keelan Russell, man, I don't know whether I like him more on the field or off the field as far as like his approach, his confidence, because it's borderline cocky to the extent that you need with your quarterback. Like some of your best quarterbacks are the ones who are cocky, and you need to have that mindset. You need to be able to go out there and throw, be fearless. One of the big differences, and I wouldn't say Tua was cocky in any way, but one of the things that I said back in 2017 when Tua was coming in at the end of games, before he took over for Jalen in the second half of the national championship, and then I said it when we were talking about the quarterback battle afterwards, was it felt like Jalen Hurts in 2017 regressed in the sense of he was worried about what he couldn't do on a football field. He was worried about making mistakes. He very limited interceptions, limited turnovers, but it's because he wasn't taking a whole lot of chances. Like guys would be open, he'd see it, but he would be too afraid to make the throw because he wasn't confident. And he was worried about Tua being over his shoulder. It's like, hey, that's the one thing the coaching staff told me to do. It's not really about going out here and winning. the quarterback battle or, keeping the quarterback job, it's about limiting your mistakes. Don't do anything that's going to get you beat. You ain't got to go out there and do a whole bunch of things that win us football games. You mostly have to just, take advantage of your playmakers, limit the turnovers, do all that. And so I think he was just playing very timid in 2017. And I think Tua was playing completely fearless. I think he had that unwavering belief in himself, and I think that was found through religion. I mean, I think he'll tell you that. But he'd go out there and, it just felt like he could go out there and throw 3 or 4 interceptions, and he would go out there for that 5th drive, and he'd be saying, there's nothing on this football field that I can't do. And with Keelan Russell, man, it feels like he's very much that way. It's a different approach with him. I'm not saying he's Tua as far as just how they behave, but I think that he's kind of got that ability where he goes out there with the right mindset. You want a guy who's mentally strong, going to be able to lead your guys. And he's got the ability to back it up with physical talent. And so I'm really excited about what he brings to the table. If he wins the job in 2025, I want everyone to know there will be zero part of me that's shocked. I just don't want to put that expectation on him coming in before we ever even see him. And I personally believe in Ty Simpson. So, if for whatever reason Todd doesn't end up panning out, that's not really going to concern me a bunch. But it's a good quarterback room. I understand they lose Jalen Milroe, you lose Dylan Lonergan. You could have had Julian Saint in that room had he not left. But the 3 guys they have, I believe in all 3, and I think one of them is going to emerge and give Alabama quality play out of that position in 2025.
All right, there you go. Clint Lamb from Cover Crimson, Mick Gillispie here. What do you got going on at covercrimson.com? And I know it's $25 off right now in the annual subscription because of the year 2025 and a new year. And Happy New Year, Clint. Is this our first show we've done? No, we did another show, but that's the first show we've done today in the new year.
Yeah. And I apologize to everybody. I know I sound terrible. I am sick. I got
playing hurt.
I started feeling bad on Friday. Saturday, it was like I still was like, well, this is not getting worse. And then Sunday, yesterday, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Sudafed, the kind that you have to sign off on to get it. I'd never taken that before in my life. It's a miracle drug, but I took it yesterday at like 2. So I'm getting to the end of that. It's a 24-hour thing. So I'm probably starting to sound a lot worse than I did. Yesterday I was shocked at I feel like $1 million there for a little while. But I'm about to take that second dose and hopefully it hits the same way. Just want people to know if I've sounded stopped up or terrible, that's why. Hadn't really stopped us. I did do the snap count observations for the defense. I did that on Friday. We'll be getting into the offense. The sickness has kind of, I was planning to do that over the weekend, didn't really have a chance, but we'll be doing that. And then it's like the season long stuff. We're going to be diving into like the season long snap counts and where they've lost production, where you can kind of expect it, guys who have grown. Going to be a lot of fun to do that. And then, like I said, we're going to be doing a video on this, but over at Cover Crimson, I'm going to be doing the top 10 transfer portal losses. That's going to be coming out today as well. We'll probably do the video, I think, tomorrow on it. And we'll dive into this more and why I think they're big losses. It won't be just based off of production necessarily. I think, there's a lot of factors involved, but we'll be doing that. We'll continue to do a lot of other stuff. It's the off season, but basketball is doing well. Really going to start to focus on that. Got a lot of football content, off season stuff to cover. So definitely go sign up if you haven't already.
All right, guys. And remember, we're brought to you by mybookie.ag. Promo code next round, double your initial deposit, NFL playoffs, college football playoffs, and much more there, basketball as well. So take advantage of that at mybookie.ag. All right, like, subscribe, thumbs up. Thanks for hanging out with us on the video as well, and we will do it again tomorrow. We're going to have content on here every day, and so be excited. EG is going to start becoming a regular contributor on here, and I know you guys are excited about that. Elephant in the room. Yep. Still going to stay in the room for 2025. So you'll get that show, Bama and Bourbon, and much more. So look for that right here on the channel. Roll Tide, everybody.